हो गया लाइव है? अभी सही है? ओके. हेलो ऑल, वेरी गुड इवनिंग. आप लोगों को आवाज आ रही है? एम आई ऑडिबल? एनीबडी कैन राइट येस और नो? ओके. सो आई होप द पेपर दैट वेंट नाउ, एंड आप में से बहुत लोगों ने जिन्होंने मेंस दिया है, तो आई बिलीव कि पेपर अच्छा गया होगा उनका. So this is not about ki, this discussion is not about ki what came from my test, what came from my class, and it is not to claim any kind of superiority or any kind of authority over the paper. Yeah. The focus of this discussion is first to analyze the nature of the paper, second to analyze what UPSC is asking, and also third for the students who are preparing for 2026, that what should be your focus in order to score well. Okay, so before I talk about uh, the question, specifically questions kaise hain, the first thing, remember, don't fall into the debate of whether the paper was easy, moderate or tough. Okay, because the paper might seem to be easy, moderate or tough based on your preparation, based on your revision. Maybe ho sakta hai ki you might not have read a lot of topics and the paper might feel tough, and if some people, they might have read some specific topics from some area, and for them the paper might seem relatively to the easier side. Some people might have different opinions on different questions. So there is no single opinion without regarding whether the paper was easy or tough or moderate, whatever it is. Okay, but one thing that is for sure, that the paper of anthropology, maybe from 2019 or 20, the nature has changed significantly. They are no longer asking questions that is directly factual. Okay, and sometimes when they are asking factual, that is too factual, it's very specific, and that's why you need to understand that ki certain question banks that people usually read as a major source for anthropology, like Bhasme or Akshat Jain, they might assist you, but they cannot be your primary source for reading. Okay, so the ones who basically are reading these kind of books as the primary source, they definitely will have a difficult time in qualifying or say in scoring decently well in anthropology. और ये मेरे को लगता है कि in general this is with every subject. See, this question banks will not help. Okay, so you will have to do that effort. Okay, second, the paper, what I feel believe, खास करके paper 1, I read a lot of people have written that the paper was relatively on the tougher side, but I believe ki the toughness is not because the topics were out of the syllabus. The toughness, if anybody is feeling, is because of the analytical and multi-dimensional questions that are being asked. Okay, so they are connecting the topics, right? Rather than dividing the topics in the syllabus, they are connecting the dots. Okay, and that's when your understanding will actually help you or to score marks. Okay, so what we are doing is we are reading questions from one chapter or topic from one chapter, having no analysis ki how these ideas are related. Okay, and that is where they basically are connecting the questions from socio-cultural anthropology with physical anthropology. They're connecting the questions from political with economy, or say they're connecting the question of religion with ecology and all such kind of things. So they have been doing this. So here, remember that this is the true nature of this subject also, that subject is in itself interdisciplinary, or the subject itself is holistic. That means we are not studying the humans only from one point of view, we are studying it from the multiple dimensions, and that's where the nature of the subject, they are trying to reflect the true nature of the subject in itself. Okay, so that's where you need to have a good understanding rather than simply remembering the facts. Without understanding, I believe scoring would be very much difficult. Okay, so I I will talk about certain questions and then I'll tell you कि आगे आप लोगों को क्या approach follow करनी चाहिए. Just a second. So let's see the paper 1. The first question, that is Mendelian and non-Mendelian traits. Straightforward question. What are Mendelian traits? That is simply speaking in one line, one gene, one character wale traits. That is the Mendelian traits. Non-Mendelian traits, any trait that is following polygenic, genetic polymorphism, pleiotropy. Okay, so they will be coming under the non-Mendelian traits. Direct and straightforward question. The second one, theoretical significance of Puram kinship system. Okay, this Puram kinship system, although this is very factual, अगर आपको पता होगा तभी लिख पाओगे. Okay, but if anybody must have heard this, so this is a study that was done by Rodney Needham in support of alliance theory. That talks about the kind of exchange that actually happens that creates that create bonds between the groups. So the Levi-Strauss actually talked about two types of alliances. One is the direct exchange between two groups, and the other is the indirect exchange or asymmetrical exchange that actually happens. So here in case of Puram kinship system, the society is divided into 5 clans, and the bride giver is not the same as the bride taker. Okay, so A will give the bride to B, B will give to C, C will give to D, D to E, and E will close the loop by giving the bride to A. Okay, so direct exchange that is not happening. So this is the Puram kinship system. Then osteodontocheratic, direct straightforward question. Australopithecus may we actually talk about this osteodontocheratic culture. Osteo means bones, donto means teeth, keratic means horns. Okay, so osteodontocheratics reflects the beginning form of culture. This term was coined by Raymond Dart, and here basically the question is the culture of Australopithecus and Australopithecus, its makers. Okay, so Australopithecus के बारे में लिखना था. Smell as a signal amongst non-human primates. Straightforward question. Reading primates, we usually discuss कि जैसे ही primates during the time of evolution, they basically had arboreal lifestyle, that means they shifted towards the trees. Smell started to decline, that is the olfactory nerves in the brain, they started to decline and they started to rely more on vision. So vision की वजह से क्या हुआ कि जब smell decline करने लगा तो आपका nose actually started to lose its significance, and then vision वाला चीजें develop होने लग जाते हैं. Frontation of eye happens, binocular vision actually starts to develop, 3D depth vision actually comes up, and then color vision will actually start to come up, and that's where the evolution starts with decline of olfactory nerves or senses and with rise of say vision. So jitna less evolved primate hoga, so basically that is the apes, oh sorry, I'm talking not the apes, that is the proconsuls or say certain less evolved primates, they will be the ones basically who will have more reliance on sense of smell, and the most evolved primates, that is the humans, they have less reliance on the sense of smell. Okay, then comes the culture and embodiment. This is the question that basically is testing your analytical understanding. So अगर आपको word embodiment का मतलब पता है तो उस केस में it becomes relatively easy, because आप throughout paper 1 paper 2 you are talking about the embodiment of the culture. Embodiment means that culture is reflected through human body as well. Okay, human body is not different from culture, human body is a reflection of human culture. So we as a human basically हमारे जो manners हैं, the way we dress up, the tattoo that we have, or maybe the dietary features that we have, even sensory perceptions that we have, कौन सी smell अच्छी लगती है, कौन सी smell, अब हो सकता है कि somebody might be liking the smell of chicken and the other one might feel disgusting with the smell of chicken. That is cultural training. ऐसा थोड़ी ना है कि सबको एक ही टाइप की स्मेल अच्छी लग रही है. आप कई कल्चर्स में जाते हो and they basically smell and they say that कि how aromatic that smell is, and you might feel that कि कितना अजीब सा लग रहा है, because it's not that कि आपके sensory perceptions by birth अलग थे, it is by you have been trained like that. So a lot of our bodily features, they are basically created by our culture, or say the idea of beauty, what is considered to be beautiful, fat is beautiful or the lean body is beautiful, basically that is also created through our cultural training. So that is the culture and embodiment. So it is, I believe, a test of your English कि अगर आपको embodiment का मतलब पता है तो then it becomes relatively easy, क्योंकि आप पूरे anthropology में यही बात कर रहे हो. Okay, then comes the Miocene hominoid remains and their significance in evolution. इस क्वेश्चन में सबने पढ़ा होगा I believe, but the trick comes when you just need to know कि मियोसिन एज कौन सी है. So we basically are reading प्लेस्टोसीन, मियोसिन, ये एज आपको पता होनी चाहिए. अगर आपको पता है तो then you are very much comfortable. So मियोसिन is somewhere around 23 to 5 million years ago, and 23 to 5 million years ago में you have like hominoids में Sivapithecus, Ramapithecus, Dryopithecus, Gigantopithecus, or then pre-Australopithecines like Kadaba, Ramidus. Okay, so Sahelanthropus. So ये सब के नाम आप मेंशन कर सकते हो, that is the case. Then the second B, compare and contrast the symbolic approaches of Clifford Geertz and Victor Turner to understand culture. Straightforward question, theory से पूछा गया है. Symbolic approach by Turner and Geertz. So Geertz basically talking about symbol as vehicle of culture, a tool required for communication, and Turner basically talking about symbol as operators in social process, basically to maintain the stability in the society, how basically it promotes or makes us act in a certain manner that actually ensures the stability. Okay, so that is the approaches. Next, how political economy is integrated with ecological and adaptability perspectives in biocultural anthropology. Okay, now this is, I would say that it's a difficult question because it is analytical. ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी ने पढ़ा नहीं. The moment I tell you कि इसमें क्या लिखना था, you will feel like ये तो पढ़ा है. Okay, so basically it is talking about the political economy. Political economy means that how distribution of power in the society basically is affecting the distribution of resources. Okay, or say political economy basically talks about two things. One is the domestic economy, or say domestic affairs, say how political, how distribution of power basically affecting the domestic affairs like family affairs, and how distribution of power is basically affecting the arrangement of people with respect to the government. Okay, so here it is saying that कि अगर centralization of power है तो that will determine the distribution of resources, access to the resources, affordability to the resources. That will create some kind of class inequality, that will create racial inequality, or say that might create national inequalities also, first world and third world nations, and that will actually impact what is called as the adaptability of the people. Okay, so for example, if a if we talk about the deforestation, say जैसे tribes के साथ deforestation हो रहा है because of the developmental projects, जिसकी वजह से what is actually happening, tribes are basically supposed to move out of the forest, move out of their land or habitat, तो जिसकी वजह से उनकी adaptability affect हो रही है. Or because of the colonization, what was actually happening, a certain group of people, they were actually made slaves, they were actually made the bonded laborers, and that is where the political economy was affecting their adaptability. Saharia tribes हैं HLA-DRB1, और से उनको pulmonary TB के cases आ रहे हैं, या फिर कई सारे tribes हैं जहाँ पे livelihood life expectancy कम हो जाती है काफी ज़्यादा, उन वहाँ पे you will see that disease morbidity would actually increase because of this political economy. Malnutrition diseases will come up very frequently, okay, because of this political economy. Okay, so that is what you have to write. Next one, how anthropologists assess the nutritional status of a community. Discuss the significance of intersectionality of ecology, culture and social inequality in the study of nutritional anthropology. सीधा सा एकदम same question की बात करते हैं. So first one is nutritional status of a community. How do anthropologists will assess? Simple सी बात है, आप लोगों ने पूरा पेपर यूनिट 9 यूनिट 10 में यही पढ़ा है. Okay, so that is certain anthropometric measurements. Okay, so आप height, weight और जो height weight ratios होते हैं उसके basis पे you identify the cases of wasting, the cases of stunting. Okay, और protein energy malnutrition, nutritional status kwashiorkor कर, okay, marasmus, ये वाली problems को identify करना. That is how, or say by using certain growth charts, you basically find out कि how they will be assessing the nutritional status of a community. Okay, or maybe infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates, life expectancies. Okay, so that is epidemiological studies के through. Okay, and then significance of intersectionality of ecology, culture and social inequality in the study of nutritional anthropology. So how ecology, culture and social inequality is basically affecting the nutritional status of the people. So ecology will determine what kind of resources you have. Okay, उसके basis पे that will actually determine major food availability आपके पास क्या है. अगर आप agriculturalist हो तो then you will be depending on the staple foods, and that you can say that कि कई सारे agricultural communities में जब staple food like maize है तो उनके अंदर कोई particular vitamin deficiencies आ जाती हैं, जो जहाँ पे staple food rice है या wheat है तो that is actually leading to micronutrient deficiencies. Okay, and say hunting gathering में you see that कि since the hunters are dependent on multiple types of foods. Okay, तो वहाँ पे आपको micronutrient deficiency नहीं दिखेगी, but as soon as you move towards agriculture you will find that कि micronutrient deficiencies आना शुरू हो जाती हैं because staple food वाला concept आ जाता है. And then culture, so cultural belief systems या cultural ideas, so that will also affect the nutritional status of the people. So for example, uh, idea of beauty. So certain communities consider fatness to be a sign of beauty. Based on that, they will consume fatty products. Okay, certain communities consider leanness to be the sign of beauty. That will actually say decide the kind of food that they have. Or say for example, we have seen the case of Chiapas, Coca-Cola consumption बहुत ज़्यादा है, and जिसकी वजह से diabetes बहुत ज़्यादा है वहाँ पे. Okay, so that is the cultural factors that will be determining the, or say there are certain food taboos in different cultures. कुछ कुछ खाना polluted माना जाता है, कुछ कुछ खाना basically considered to be pure, and based on that, that is what the culture is doing. Social inequality. Okay, so social inequality hierarchy अपने घर से शुरू हो जाती है. Female inequality, female malnutrition deficiencies actually comes up. Racial inequality, income inequality, जिसकी वजह से आपको वहाँ पे nutritional status impact होगा. Okay, so simple से questions है directly from the syllabus. Next is drawbacks in assuming culture as an integrated closed system in understanding of contemporary society. Now here this is, I would say, moderate to difficult question. Okay, but यहाँ पे भी if your understanding of the subject is good, you will easily be able to tackle it. So what is this integrated closed system? It's a structure functionist idea of society. Okay, that culture is an integrated system, and that is relatively institution exists to maintain the social structure. Okay, so closed है मतलब बाहर से कोई कॉन्टैक्ट नहीं है, एंड सिंस बाहर से कोई कॉन्टैक्ट नहीं है तो सोसाइटी स्टेबल है, सोसाइटी में कोई चेंज आ ही नहीं रहा है, देयर इज अ सोशल स्ट्रक्चर. ओके, एंड if you see the theories after structure functionism, they are basically challenging this integration caused idea. So they are talking about, like Edmund Leach ने just structuralism में ये बात बोली कि processual approach दिया उसने उसने बोला कि there is society is dynamic in nature, society change होती है because of internal factors, external factors, there are contradictions, and जिसकी वजह से the society oscillates between two extremes, oscillating equilibrium का idea दिया उसने. तो he is, while studying Kachins, he rejects the idea of tribes as a closed entity or closed bounded entity के idea को reject करता है. And he also says that there is internal contradictions that exist between the elements of the culture. Okay, जिसकी वजह से the culture or the society oscillates between two extremes, like if you remember Gamsa Gamla of, so that is integration closed system के against idea दे रहा है. Okay, so वन इज लाइक इंटीग्रेट. इसमें पूछा है कि ड्रॉबैक्स क्या हैं, तो जितनी भी ड्रॉबैक स्ट्रक्चर फंक्शनिज्म में एग्जैक्टली द सेम ड्रॉबैक्स हियर. ओके, लाइक सोसाइटी को स्टैटिक दिखा रहा है, सोसाइटी के एक्सटर्नल कॉन्टैक्ट्स की बात नहीं कर रहा. okay, and then it is justifying the existing social structure or hierarchy in the society. Okay, so that are the major drawbacks. And then you can mention Edmund Leach, even you can talk about Arjun Appadurai, globalization की वजह से कितने सारे ethnoscapes बन रहे हैं in the modern society, the most important scholar. We all know this, I'm not talking about anything new, but exactly it's just the understanding that will actually shape whether you are attempting this question or not. Okay, next, differentiate between pedigree and genealogical analysis, discuss the history and application of these methods in anthropological studies. Straightforward question. Okay, what is pedigree? Basically it's a mechanism to understand the pattern of inheritance of certain genetic diseases or certain traits. Okay, so that is pedigree analysis simply biological inheritance को देख रहा है, and genealogy is the study of family. Okay, or say family relationship को study करता है genealogy. Now in case of pedigree, if you see that ki what we are studying is vertical transmission of the traits, say from the top to the bottom कैसे एक last बंदे को कोई genetic disease transmit हो रही है. But in case of genealogy we don't study the vertical transmission, it is vertical and horizontal. Okay, और पेडिग्री में टॉप टू बॉटम देखते हैं कि सबसे पुराना जो हमारे पास एंसेस्ट्रल रिकॉर्ड है उसको डिजीज थी, एंड देन कैसे वो ट्रांसफर होते होते सबसे लास्ट यंगेस्ट जनरेशन को आ रही है. हम जीनियोलॉजी में बॉटम टू टॉप जाते हैं, वी बेसिकली स्टार्ट फ्रॉम ईगो एंड देन क्रिएट द जीनियोलॉजी टू द टॉप, जस्ट ऑपोजिट जा रहा है. ओके, एंड पेडिग्री बेसिकली बायोलॉजिकल के केस में है और जीनियोलॉजी बेसिकली कल्चरल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी या सोशो कल्चरल एंथ्रोपोलॉजी की टूल है. नाउ व्हाट इज द हिस्ट्री ऑफ इट? सो पेडिग्री इज से यूज्ड बेसिकली जब पेडिग्री ट्रेट्स they started in 1900 से मेंडल ने सबसे पहले यूज करना शुरू किया just to identify the transmission of the trait, dominant recessive traits कैसे ट्रांसमिट होते जा रहे हैं. That is the pedigree that he used, and then it became a general genetic tool basically to identify the history or say degree of transmission of certain traits over generation. एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में जीनियोलॉजी किसने सबसे पहले ऑफिशियलाइज किया, फॉर्मलाइज किया? WHR रिवर्स टोडा की स्टडी में नीलगिरी में बेसिकली ही डेवलप दिस जीनियोलॉजिकल मेथड. बट इट इज नॉट दैट कि अगर आप थोड़ा सा इसमें डालते जीनोलॉजिकल मेथड में कि हमारे इंडिया में कई सारे एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे बही बनाई जाती है, जहाँ पे जीनोलॉजिकल रिकॉर्ड्स एक्चुअली आर केप्ट, हरिद्वार में पांडास आर देयर, सो समथिंग दैट वी ऑलरेडी नो, ओके, हरिद्वार में चिंतपूर्णी, ऐसी कई कई जगह हैं जहाँ पे फ्यूनरल्स होते हैं, एंड दैट इज वेयर the genealogical records are actually maintained for generations. So the earliest known record is uh, somewhere in 1263 AD. So there were societies जहाँ पे they used to maintain this kind of records, कुल ग्रंथ जिसको कहते थे. Okay, so that is the genealogical history of India. Next comes anthropology. Provides a multidimensional understanding of human beings by bridging the gap between science and humanities. दो एस्पेक्ट हैं इस क्वेश्चन के. One is the multidimensional understanding of humans. So talking about humans from past and the present, human from different geographical spaces, human from socio-cultural angle, and human from biological angle. Okay, so mainly talking about the four major branches of anthropology which study human from time and space. Okay, across time and space. That is the multidimensional understanding of human beings and the gap between science and humanities. Okay, so we understand the culture, we understand the society. Along with the evolution of the culture, we are linking the human culture with human biology. So that is the biocultural approach, is the bridging the gap between science and humanities. So दो aspects पे बात करनी है, एक तो multidimensional and how does it gap between how does it bridge the gap between science and humanities. Okay, so relatively easy and direct question, straightforward, unit 1 में से पूछा गया. नोट ऑन मुजेरियन टूल ट्रेडिशन, मुजेरियन कल्चर एंड इट्स मेकर. अब थोड़ा सा कॉम्प्लिकेट करने के लिए उन्होंने नियांडरथल, इतने साल से पूछे, नियांडरथल का नाम नहीं लिया, बट नियांडरथल के टूल्स को मुजेरियन टूल कल्चर बोला जाता है, और मिडिल पेलियोलिथिक कल्चर को से दैट इज कॉल्ड एज मुजेरियन कल्चर. ओके, सो व्हाट इज मुजेरियन? इट्स आप सिंपली बता सकते हो कि इससे पहले वाले जितने थे वो कोर टूल टेक्नोलॉजी थे, ये फ्लेक टूल टेक्नोलॉजी है, indirect percussions, different kinds of tools that were found here. Okay, that is the Moserian tool tradition, or that is largely found in Neanderthals of Europe. Okay, so Moserian Neanderthal का culture और Neanderthals के बारे में बात करनी थी. Straight forward question, fossil, बस आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि Moserian किसके culture को कहते हैं. Then comes James Fraser's theory of evolutionism, religion, magic, religion and science. That is the theory of evolutionism. And then comes elucidate the place of religion in modernity. Here basically it might feel like कि थोड़ा सा बाहर से पूछ लिया, नहीं, but if you see this question and so what is the place of religion in modernity, आप बताओगे कि देखो कुछ scholars बोलते थे कि religion will vanish due to modernity. Okay, science will replace religion. So like Marx, Fraser, Weber, they used to say that कि science will replace religion. That is the modern idea. Then came certain scholars who suggested that कि science and religion coexist. मालिनोव्स्की बोलता है अनसर्टेनिटी एंड एंजाइटी है, जहां तक नॉलेज है तब तक आप नॉलेज यूज करोगे, बियॉन्ड दैट नॉलेज यू विल बी डिपेंडिंग ऑन रिलीजन. सो कोएग्जिस्टेंस. और डरखाइम आल्सो यूज्ड टू से दैट रिलीजन इज इटर्नल इन नेचर, रिलीजन विल एग्जिस्ट फॉर एवर, सेक्रेड एंड प्रोफेन के आइडिया से that there will be something sacred. Sacred is the representation of society, so as long there is society there will be religion. And then postmodernist, okay, so believing without belonging, belonging without believing. Okay, so these kind of ideas that shows that religion is eternal. One form of religion will be replaced by a new form of religion, not by science. Okay, so that is the second view that you can mention. Okay, next question, 10 marker, multi-species, multi-sited and critical ethnography. Okay, here I would say that it is relatively moderate to difficult. Okay, अगर आपने पढ़ा है तो ही कर पाओगे. So but I believe कि postmodernism में I have discussed this multi-sited and critical ethnography. Okay, multi-sited was Adriana Petrina, basically talking about the that one particular phenomena cannot be understood at a particular place, but rather you need to study multiple sites to have a holistic understanding. उन्होंने Chernobyl nuclear disaster को study किया है. Okay, that is the multi-sited. Then critical one, so basically studying a particular society not just to record but to promote, to actually talk about inequality, to highlight certain problems that is going on in the society. It's more like an activist form of ethnography. Okay, that's what the postmodernists used to do. And multi-species is something, even if you don't know it, you can actually understand from the meaning itself. स्पीशीज का मतलब दैट इज ए बायोलॉजिकल एंटिटी. सो पहले अभी हम एथनोग्राफी कर रहे हैं तो ह्यूमन कल्चर को स्टडी कर रहे हैं, ह्यूमन सोसाइटी को स्टडी कर रहे हैं. मल्टी स्पीशीज विल से दैट कि ह्यूमंस आर नॉट alone, humans are connected species with others. So in order to understand the behavior of the humans, you need to understand other species as well. So सिर्फ humans को study मत करो, but humans के साथ जितने भी other species हैं, ecological perspective को लेके बाकी सारे species को भी study करो. So for example, there are certain debates that can be addressed only when we go for multi-species ethnography, like is culture unique to humans? Is language unique to humans? Or what kind of communication exists in humans? Is it different from other animals? Okay, is emotions or say altruism unique to humans? वो तो कैसे पता चलेगा अगर आप सिर्फ humans को study कर रहे हो? So altruism, culture, various other things you will be able to understand when you study multiple species. Okay, so that is it. Evolutionary significance of menopause. Straightforward question. Mother's hypothesis, grandmother's hypothesis, why menopause is a evolutionary trait. So this used to say that menopause a recent phenomena hai. Okay, it might not have existed say long back because life expectancy at that point of time was not that much. Maybe शायद women 40-45 साल के बाद beyond अभी जीने लगी हैं, जिसकी वजह से the organs they are actually crossing their shelf life and eventually menopause हो जा रहा है. Then there is evolutionary significance like कि the egg cells are made at the time of birth itself, and longer the age, greater is the chance for some mutations, and that's why the age of reproduction is restricted in case of women. That is the mean evolutionary significance, and there are two expressions of it: mother's hypothesis and grandmother's hypothesis. Then fission track dating method and its application. देखो, अगर ये क्वेश्चन हो सकता है कि किसी ने डायरेक्टली पढ़ा ना हो, लेकिन अगर कॉमन सेंसिकल आइडिया है कि फिजन क्या है, एक रेडियो एक्टिव एलिमेंट में ही होगा. ओके, एंड रेडियो एक्टिव एलिमेंट में होगा तो मतलब रेडियो फिजन होने के बाद सम पार्टिकल्स आर गेटिंग रिलीज, एंड जिसकी वजह से वो पर्टिकुलर एलिमेंट और दैट पर्टिकुलर एलिमेंट माइट चेंज इट्स फॉर्म, और वो हाफ लाइफ कॉन्सेप्ट से आप बेसिकली उसको रिलेट कर सकते हो. सो यूरेनियम डेटिंग, पोटेशियम आर्गन डेटिंग, रेडियोकार्बन डेटिंग, दे ऑल कम अंडर दिस फिजन ट्रैक. अल्टीमेटली फिजन ही तो हो रहा है उनमें कि जब कुछ इलेक्ट्रॉन रिलीज हो जा रहे हैं एंड इवेंचुअली द नेचर ऑफ द एलिमेंट्स इज एक्चुअली चेंजिंग. Okay, so that is the fission track dating methods and its application. Then mitochondrial DNA and human evolution. Okay, although that might not be directly read in any topic, but whenever we are talking about say human evolution, we do talk about the concept of mitochondrial DNA that we transfer from mother to children. Okay, and there is a concept that is we regularly read what is called as mitochondrial Eve. Okay, so that says that कि 2 लाख साल पहले basically every human had a common ancestor, 7 mitochondrial Eve, the idea by Rebecca Cann. So that is talking about the mitochondrial DNA and human evolution, and mitochondrial DNA can be analyzed in order to understand the journey of human evolution. Okay, so that is the thing that has to be written. Fetal origin of adult diseases and the contribution of David Barker. Now here people might have think that कि ये तो क्या पूछ लिया, out of the syllabus पूछ लिया, but there is a topic that is directly in your syllabus, that is thrifty genotype. Okay, this concept was given by James Neal, and इस thrifty genotype को counter करने के लिए एक नई idea आया, that is called as thrifty phenotype, and this is what David Barker actually gave, or which is called as very famously Barker's hypothesis. For the students who are my students, so basically they can check out their notes. Thrifty phenotype में David Barker or Barker's hypothesis, that is directly mentioned in their notes. Okay, so that is the question that is being asked here. Then what are genetic markers? Discuss their applications in understanding population variation, disease association and forensics. Okay, genetic markers क्या हैं? Some specific genetic features, certain genetic identity that is basically specific to a particular population or a particular individual. Okay, that is the genetic markers. Now different types of genetic markers are there, blood genetic markers are there, blood proteins are there, or maybe single nucleotide polymorphism, SNPs are there. That is the different genetic markers of different populations. Now understanding population variations, you can talk about like some hemoglobin act as a genetic marker, or blood group actually acts as a genetic marker that can actually tell you, the distribution can tell you the different population variations. Okay, आप Tibetan population का बता सकते हो कि उनके पास एक different variation of hemoglobin and that actually gives them advantage to survive on upper altitude or higher altitude. Okay, compared to Andes. Andes के पास different kinds of hemoglobins are there that is actually providing them support to survive in say higher altitude. Okay, so that is the population variation. Disease association, HLA. HLA is very significant genetic marker for that. Okay, certain variants of HLA are related to autoimmune disorders. Certain variants of HLA are related to diabetics or rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, that is the disease association. Forensics में genetic markers provide identity to the individual and the population. It can be used for racial identification. It can be used for individual identification. Okay, like HLA को आप use कर सकते हैं. HLA is so much of polymorphic. Every individual is inheriting that HLA from the parents. So you can use it as an individual identity factor. Okay, so these are certain ideas that can be used. The agenda of biological anthropology became more scientific from the middle of the 20th century. Now, agenda of biological anthropology became more scientific. अब mid of 20th century में क्या हुआ? 1950. Okay, Second World War ended, and you will see that कि anthropology experienced a paradigm shift there. So आपको पहले बताना होगा कि before mid of 20th century, what was the major problems of with anthropology? Racial classification, idea of eugenics. Okay, and that was the major problem that were non-scientific racial typologies बनाना, new eugenics का idea बनाना, criminal tribes को बताना कि nature nurture versus debate में nature side को prominent करना, okay, nurture को कम बताना. And then post 1950s क्या होना शुरू हुआ? Genetic studies started to develop. Okay, and that is where racial classifications were busted. फिर उसके बाद ह्यूमन जीनोम प्रोजेक्ट आता है एंड देन नेचर वर्सेस नर्चर में नेचर एंड नर्चर हो गया. ओके, सो दैट इज व्हाट यू नीड टू टॉक अबाउट. ओके, then comes theoretical perspective in linguistic anthropology to explain relationship of culture, language and thought. Ethno-linguistics पूछा है, culture, language and thoughts. Okay, so two major ideas: language impacts culture. Second one, culture impacts language. Language impacts culture, that is Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Culture impacts language, that is culture determinism, cultural emphasis. That is what needs to be discussed here. Straightforward. Okay, how the study of variation in forms of marriage led to rethinking on the concepts of social reproduction, kinship and family. Okay, now first we need to say that initially when the study started, people used to believe that monogamy is the ideal form of marriage. Okay, that is the European anthropologists. Then they started to find that some societies have a norm of polyandry, some society have a norm of polygyny, some society have a norm of dual local residence. Okay, or visiting husband concept was there, and that basically when studied you will find that कि इसके अलग अलग पर्पस थे. So for example, polyandry का पर्पस क्या था कि लैंड कम था तो लैंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन को रोकने के लिए polyandry प्रैक्टिस कर रहे थे, या फिर demography was the major reason कि if there was a female shortage that actually led to the rise of polyandry. Polygyny में again the demographic factor, male mortality ज़्यादा है, female ज़्यादा है, तो then polygyny. And then resource distribution was another factor for starting of polygyny. Okay, various advantages that actually is telling that these kind of marriages will exist because of certain socio-economic, cultural and ecological factors that are present in the society. Okay, so that is you need to talk about different kinds of marriages and their relevance in different societies. That is what was discussed. How the major theories are proposed in support of origin of food production and how the change in subsistence economy brought revolution during this period. Now, अब ये लोगों को लगेगा कि ये क्वेश्चन टफ है, but if you have heard about the word Neolithic revolution, God and child, the second question is asking about this only, कि कैसे फूड सरप्लस आने की वजह से सोसाइटी पूरी की पूरी ऑल्टर हो जाएगी. सरप्लस आया, ओके, पहली बार हायरार्की आएगी सोसाइटी में, पॉलिटिकल आइडियाज विल स्टार्ट टू कम अप, सिटीज विल कम अप, सिविलाइजेशंस विल बी बिल्ड अप. ओके, दैट इज द सेकंड पार्ट. एंड द फर्स्ट इज द मेजर थ्योरीज प्रपोज्ड इन द ओरिजिन ऑफ फूड प्रोडक्शन. So different scholars gave this idea. Gordon Child ने बोला कि climate change हुआ. Okay, then other scholars like Louis Binford, he basically says that Louis Binford says that population pressure and rising sea levels was one of the reason. Then Braidwood, he says that greater understanding of the environment basically made people shift towards agriculture. And Kent Flannery, he basically gave the idea that positive feedback system. Okay, that means it is not just one factor but बहुत सारे और factors है that actually led to the birth of agriculture. Okay, so बहुत सारे theories थी. अगर आपने Neolithic revolution पढ़ा है तो you must be knowing this there are multiple theories that are related to the origin of food production. Okay, and that suggests that कि Neolithic age आया क्यों, लोग hunting gathering से agriculture पे shift क्यों होते हैं. So these are the theories that needs to be discussed here. Okay, and then comes discuss the centrality of African continent in the narrative of human evolution. Out of Africa theory, complete replacement. Out of Africa theory, partial replacement theory. Okay, and then you can mention that कि जो भी major fossils हैं, okay, they have been found there. So before Homo erectus, every major fossils basically who are pre-human are found in Africa only. So if we talk about pre-Australopithecines biped, or say Australopithecines or Homo habilis or Homo erectus, for the larger part of their life, they were largely confined to Africa only, which suggests that out of Africa theory, partial replacement or complete replacement. So यही बताना था. Okay. Then comes how the theory of postmodernism are relevant in promoting social justice and empowerment of marginalized community. Now this is a question that I would say that it was bit analytical. Reason being, you must have read postmodernism, but if you don't understand postmodernism, you will not be able to apply it. But if you are understanding what is postmodernism, so it arose as a mechanism to counter the powers equation. Okay, क्यों बोल के कि जितनी भी पुरानी theories हैं, there is a power element in it, power element between the anthropologist and the subject that is being studied, omnipotence of the anthropologist. Okay, certain views are taken, say dominant discourse का idea Michel Foucault ने दिया. Okay, or Derrida also talks about this problem, that deconstruction approach, in which he says that certain views are made more visible and we should go for deconstruction, that is something that is hidden between lines that should be read. Okay, so that is where it then counters it by saying that कि हमें subjective opinion लाना चाहिए, objectivity के नाम पे dominant view को promote किया जा रहा है. Second, we should be going for eclecticism, that is all the views should be taken into consideration, multi-sided ethnography के through basically there's a, and then marginal voices को भी सुनना चाहिए, all the section of the population should be recorded, should be known. Okay, that is the marginalization को counter कर रहा है, saying that the ones who were studying, the ones who were giving the idea of the simple societies, they were actually creating a power equation by creating such kind of knowledge. Okay, Michel Foucault ने भी यही बात बोली है कि dominant discourse power creates knowledge, and that knowledge then basically helps the one to maintain their power. Okay, so that is you need to talk about Foucault, Derrida, and the counter idea that they gave to challenge the power equation in anthropology. Okay. Now, genome-wide disease association studies advance our understanding of health and disease. Okay, now people might not have heard this GWAS क्या है, पर हमने ये तो पढ़ा है यार कि कोई भी जीन्स की या जेनेटिक्स में जेनेटिक स्टडी से बेसिकली हमारी हेल्थ और डिजीज की अंडरस्टैंडिंग कैसे इंप्रूव हुई. Okay, so first it was like that diseases are completely genetic. Okay, और single gene single disease की idea था, one gene one character. So that was Mendelian traits. But later on what we found that कि पहली बात multiple genes can act, then there is a role of environment as well. Okay, plus not all the diseases are inheritable, some diseases are created during one's own life. Okay, some are mutation related diseases are there. Okay, plus you will find that they were able to identify the diseases which are related to some specific genes also. So they were able to spot out that these genes and certain variants of that gene responsible for that particular disease. Okay, so that is, and इसका benefit क्या होगा? इसका benefit क्या होगा that we will be able to make customized medicines, we will be able to improvise the human health, a lot of diseases that were yet incurable, we will be able to cure it out. Okay, so that is the genome-wide disease association studies. Then examine the utility of human remote remains in forensic analysis. Okay, discuss the facial reconstruction technique. Straightforward question from unit 12. What is that? Remains को कैसे यूज करेंगे, तो कौन कौन से remains हैं और किस तरीके से यूज कर सकते हैं. It can be fingerprints. Second is say the blood samples, semen samples or the skeletal remains, and इनको कैसे यूज कर सकते हैं for age, for racial reconstruction, or say for individual identification or personal identification. That is where they can be used. Okay, and then facial reconstruction technique 2D techniques, 3D techniques और superimposition techniques for facial reconstruction. You can give the example लूसी का face ऐसे create किया गया, नियंडरथल्स के faces इस तरीके से create किए गए, and then कई सारे normal cases भी हैं जहाँ पे facial reconstruction techniques has been used. Nithari mother case in order to identify which skull or which skeletal part belongs to which child for the last rites. So here the facial reconstruction techniques were used. Okay, so this is about the paper one, and I believe now after say this brief discussion, you must have felt that what was required was not so much of content. What is actually required is some basic understanding to see from where the question is being asked rather than knowing specifically the content that is being asked. Okay, because content is infinite. आप ऐसा नहीं हो सकता that you can read anything and everything which is under the sky. Okay, if you go with that, so you might end up as a teacher here. You might not be able to qualify the exam. Okay, so priority is to have a good understanding of the subject so that you can use the content here and there. You can just play with the content. आपको बस समझ में आना चाहिए कि पूछ क्या रहा है वो. Okay, next question, next paper. If I'll deal some part of it. Say I didn't get the time to type all the questions. So first one, Sonian cultural tradition, simple, lower Pelthic culture of India. Okay, Deterra and Peterson ने discover किया. So 5 layers are there, T0, T1, T2, T3, T4. Okay, and then the Son Valley, and her layer पे आपको you are finding different kinds of tools or different kinds of settlements. That is the Sonian cultural tradition, lower Pelthic. Caste domination, factionalism, and political power. Okay, so that is they are trying to connect the topics. फैक्शनलिज्म अलग से पढ़ते हैं, जैसे कि सबसे पहले आपको बताना था कि कास्ट डोमिनेशन क्या है. कास्ट डोमिनेंट कास्ट इफ देयर, सो इट इज न्यूमेरिकली सुपीरियर. ओके, लैंड ओनरशिप होगी, एंड द थर्ड वन इज लाइक द पोजीशन इन द लोकल हायरार्की शुड बी गुड. ओके, बट normally what actually happens, factionism says that ki these caste groups in the multi-caste village, they are fighting, they act as, or they live as political factions rather than say cooperative groups. So, and this political factionism actually makes them competing groups, which is the fundamental basis of रूरल पॉलिटिक्स. से फॉर एग्जांपल ऑस्कर लुई ने फैक्शनिज्म के बारे में बात की. रामपुर विलेज में देखा कि जाट्स डिवाइडेड इनटू 3 मेजर सब कास्ट और 3 मेजर फैक्शंस, दैट इज दबास, खरब्स, अहलावत्स. ओके, एससी दुबे आल्सो टॉक्स अबाउट दिस, एंड देन डीएन मजूमदार हाइलाइट्स कि कैसे फैक्शंस में डिवाइड हो गया है. श्रीपुरम की स्टडी में आंध्र बेटे टॉक्स अबाउट ब्राह्मण, नॉन ब्राह्मण, आर्य द्रविडियंस फैक्शंस की तरह एक्ट कर रहे हैं. दे आर बेसिकली मोबिलाइज्ड बाय डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल फोर्सेस. ओके, देन रीजनलिज्म एंड ऑटोनॉमी, ये PYQ है, सीधा पूछा गया है. ओके, दैट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट द एथनिक आइडेंटिटीज एंड देयर एक्सप्रेशंस. सो यू कैन टॉक अबाउट कि रीजनलिज्म एक एथनिक आइडेंटिटी है, वेर इन द रीजनल आइडेंटिटी, सो यू कैन मेंशन दैट की प्राइमोर्डियल फीचर्स, प्राइमोर्डियल थ्योरी से बता सकते हो. यू कैन टॉक अबाउट द इंस्ट्रूमेंटलिस्ट एस्पेक्ट्स, और यू कैन एक्चुअली यूज एमी ब्राउन अप्रोच. एमी ब्राउन का अप्रोच क्या है, दैट देयर आर स्ट्रक्चरल इश्यूज, देन देयर इज ए ट्रिगर इवेंट, and then there is a leadership that will actually lead to the expression of regionalism. Okay, or there are proximate factors, and then there are immediate factors. Okay, so that is regionalism and autonomy. Warrior relevance philosophy with respect to Arunachal Pradesh, the philosophy of Nifa, जो उसकी किताब है जिसमें उसने 5 principles दिए which later on went to become the tribal Panchil. Okay, so he talked about this warrior relevance philosophy with respect to Arunachal Pradesh. Characteristics and communication between little and great tradition. What are the characteristics of little tradition? ठीक है, रूरल होंगी, लोकल होंगी, स्पॉन्टेनियस होंगी, विदाउट रैशनैलिटी होंगी. ऑफ द masses, unlettered masses. Great, that is urban, followed by elite few, written, organized, unambiguous. Okay, that is in the form of epic. And communication कैसे हो रहा है? Universalization and parochialization. Straightforward question. Discuss the paleoanthropological significance of Sivalix of India, giving its subdivision fossil primate fauna and major primate fossil localities. अब Sivalix में basically क्या मिला है? Ramapithecus, Sivapithecus and Gigantopithecus. Okay, that is what has to be mentioned कि कहाँ कहाँ पे Ramapithecus मिला है, कहाँ पे Sivapithecus मिला है, कहाँ पे Gigantopithecus मिला है, और Dryopithecus मिला है. That is simple. Okay. Delineate the major features of SS Sarkar's classification of Indian population. Was his classification better than Risley's? So whenever we discuss racial classification, we largely talk about three major types of racial classification in India. Risley was the first one, second गुहा, and the third one is सरकार. Okay, and इन्हीं में से दो को पूछ लिया. पहले वो सरकार और गुहा का पूछ चुका है, अब वो सरकार और रिजली के कंपैरिजन में पूछ रहा है. तो सरकार basically classified it into 6 categories. Risley had I think 7 categories. Risley classification was challenged because उनका sample size बहुत limited था. वो नेजल इंडेक्स के बेसिस पे कंपेयर कर रहे थे एंड हिज आइडिया वाज कंप्लीटली बेस्ड ऑन इंडो आर्यन इन्वेजन. ओके, एंड लार्जली उन्होंने लिंग्विस्टिक ग्रुप्स को रेशियल ग्रुप्स की तरह आइडेंटिफाई किया गया था. सरकार ने सिफिलिक इंडेक्स को यूज किया, लार्जर सैंपल साइज था एंड ही डिड नॉट बिलीव इन इंडो आर्यन इन्वेजन एंड दैट्स व्हाई हिज आइडिया वाज रिलेटिवली बेटर. बट कलेक्टिवली दोनों के आइडिया को आज रिजेक्ट किया जाता है बिकॉज रेसेस डू नॉट एग्जिस्ट एज ए वैलिड बायोलॉजिकल criteria. Okay, so that is what needs to be mentioned here. Then evaluate the impact of Christianity on scheduled tribe. Straightforward सवाल syllabus से पूछा गया है. Okay, कि impact of Christianity, Hinduism and Islam on tribal population. So what are the impacts? कुछ भी नहीं पता है तो social impact बता सकते हो. Conversion हुआ, religious practices change, animism और इन सब से basically move towards monotheism. Okay, and then educational changes. Say religion, Christian missionaries, they come with schools, educational institutions, cooperatives, economic changes actually come up. Then you will find that कि एक बहुत बड़ा impact आया कि उनकी language codify होने लगी because they wanted to transmit their teachings of Christ. So जिसके लिए उन्होंने उनकी language में translations करना शुरू किया बाइबल को. So that language got codified. Then cultural revivalism हुआ because the political identity was activated, खास करके मीजो और नागाज में. Okay, so Nagas, they were divided into multiple categories like Ao Nagas, Ringma, or say Konyak Nagas, or various other kind of categories were divided. They were united by Christianity, so they came under the single identity by Christianity. और मीजोस के साथ भी ऐसा था, कुकीज के साथ भी ऐसा था, and they were united by only one factor, that is the Christianity. Okay, and that's why they were able to politically assert them in the politics of Northeast India. Okay, so that is what needs to be mentioned. Evaluate the impact of Christianity. Then distinctive features of distribution of upper Paleolithic culture of India. Okay, so straightforward question, upper Paleolithic of India. Second, environmental and biocultural factors influencing the health of tribals of India. Okay, अब आप इसको पेपर 1 के एपिडेमोलॉजी की नॉलेज को कंबाइन करके इंडियन एग्जांपल्स देने हैं आपको. You know biocultural factors impacting the health of population. You know environmental factors. Okay, what are the major environmental factors like livelihood, their habitat, remote habitats हैं, connectivity नहीं है, या फिर वहाँ पे mosquitoes की presence बहुत ज़्यादा है. Okay, और जिसकी वजह से they might be suffering from malaria, बहुत ज़्यादा presence हो, sickle cell anemia के cases हो सकते हैं because of biocultural factors. Okay, so you just have to highlight certain environmental factors which might be impacting the health, and certain biocultural factors, maybe food. Second, that is their festivals or maybe their practice of hunting, or say certain, say कई जगह पे you will see that कि there are tribals who basically are नागाज में कुछ festivals हैं in which they actually go for bat hunting, caves में जाते हैं and they actually consume bats, जिसकी वजह से कई सारे नए infectious diseases can come up. Okay, so that is the cultural factors. Biological factors, maybe because of their HLAs, they might be suffering from certain disease. Saharia tribe HLA DRB 115, that is leading to more pulmonary TB वाले cases. Sickle cell anemia के cases हैं ओडिशा के tribes में, जिसके against में government of India has started that initiative of elimination of sickle cell anemia cases in India. Okay, so that is the biocultural factors influencing the health of tribals of India. Highlight the significant contribution of Guha, Iravati Karve and SRK Chopra to Indian anthropology. Now this is the question that is out of the box, not because of Guha and Karve. Guha का आपको पता है racial classification दिया है, Karve contribution which we read. Okay, बहुत सारे contributions हैं. Okay, that is study of kinship and then several village studies she has done. Okay, but SRK Chopra, that's a new name altogether. But आप अगर अपने कोई भी हैंडआउट्स या नोट्स वगैरह देखोगे which in which we have discussed about Siva Pithecus, Rama Pithecus and all, you will find that कई जगह पे ब्रैकेट में चोपड़ा लिखा होगा. Okay, he is the one who is the founder of Department of Anthropology in Punjab University and he has done larger research on Siva Pithecus, Rama Pithecus in the Sivalik. Okay, so that's SRK Chopra, but I believe कि this is something out of the box, question has to be left. Next, what are the different types of caste mobility in India? Highlight the various factors responsible for it. ओके, सो वन और द ओरिजिनल फॉर्म ऑफ कास्ट मोबिलिटी के बारे में हमने कब बात की? सांसिटाइजेशन में। और सांसिटाइजेशन के बाद लाइक इट्स अ वर्टिकल मोबिलिटी, वर्टिकल अपवर्ड मोबिलिटी. Then we have examples of desensitization. Then we have example of downward mobility. Then we have example of horizontal mobility. Okay, जिसको आप रुडोल्फ एंड रुडोल्फ के आइडिया वर्टिकल मोबिलाइजेशन, हॉरिजॉन्टल मोबिलाइजेशन, डिफरेंशियल मोबिलाइजेशन से बता सकते हो. ओके, और या कास्ट अलायंसेस, मल्टी कास्ट अलायंसेस के रिस्पेक्ट में बता सकते हो कि मल्टीपल कास्ट कमिंग टुगेदर. और से साइलेंट रेवोल्यूशन, क्रिस्टोफ जेफरलॉट, और आरोही revolution by Vivek Kumar, ये सब बता सकते हो. Okay, that is the different types of caste mobility in India, highlight the various factors responsible for it. So factors like आप initially you can talk about the traditional factors or say ideological factors like ritual purity, pollution and all such kind of things. Then you can talk about the modern factors, education, political power, wealth, cultural contact, maybe political support या political patronage क्या है. Okay, that is the factors responsible for it. Elucidate the role of demographic and social factors for population growth in India. It's a general studies type question. Okay, आप GS में social issues में Indian society में आपने पढ़ा भी होगा. Okay, certain demographic factors, you can talk about demographic transition theory here. Death decline हो रही है, sorry, decline in death and decline in the fertility rate that is happening. हम उस particular phase में आ चुके हैं, that is we are moving from the third to the fourth stage in the demographic transition. Okay, हमारे healthcare system improve हो रहे हैं, death due to infectious disease that is declining significantly, but fertility rate is also reached to that below the replacement level. That is what we are actually experiencing. Then other demographic factors that you can talk about कि अलग अलग जगह पे population density is one of the reason, or say some places the population density is low, तो वहाँ पे that is actually acting as one of the other factor. Then factors like social factors. Okay, social factors in which the status of female, okay, wealth distribution, poverty, or say various other economic factors or cultural belief system, yeah, religion and all, that will also come as the part of social factors. Okay, then critically examine the concept of scheduled tribe and mention the limitation of administrators criteria. So what is scheduled tribe? It's a politico administrative category, and what it is, it basically represents those people who are categorized as scheduled tribe in the by the Constitution of India. So you can mention the articles of Constitution of India that actually gives the president rights to declare some community as scheduled tribe. And what is the definition of scheduled tribe? All those who are declared as scheduled tribe by the president of India. Okay, so those articles have to be mentioned. And then mention कि criteria क्या थे. So सबसे पहले post independence what we did, we borrowed all the community which were labeled as backward tribes by the Government of India Act 1935. हमने उनको शेड्यूल ट्राइब का स्टेटस दे दिया. फिर उसके बाद बैकवर्ड क्लास कमीशन आई, उन्होंने क्राइटेरिया दिया कि प्रिमिटिवनेस एंड बैकवर्डनेस. फिर केम लोकूर कमिटी that actually gave the criteria, 5 criteria that we use. Okay, geographical isolation, shyness with the contact with the other. Okay, then उन्होंने उनके रिकमेंडेशन पे रिमूवल ऑफ एरिया रेस्ट्रिक्शन एक्ट आया. ओके, जिसके बेसिस पे शेड्यूल ट्राइब्स के नंबर्स फिर से बढ़ गए. एंड दैट इज the major criteria. And then you can mention ऋषिकेश पांडा की जो कमिटी बनी that actually talked about कि criteria में problem कहाँ पे है, that I actually highlighted the limitations in the criteria. That is the ऋषिकेश पांडा committee. That is the case. Then comes 10 mark question, short notes on impact of urbanization and industrialization of tribal communities of India. Straightforward question. आपको बस एक दो examples जानने थे कि आप वेदांता में वेदांता का नाम लिख सकते हो, डोंगरिया कोन्स. Okay, or several tribes like Bagh and all who were actually being displaced because of construction of NTPC projects, Rihan Dam, जिसकी वजह से. Okay, and then अभी recently you can talk about urbanization का impact that is actually happening in the tribes of Odisha, tribes of Maharashtra. Urbanization actually Mumbai Pune expressway, a lot of tribes that were living in the mid region, Lonavala and in sub region में यहाँ पे urbanization, urban forces are coming up and they are being displaced from the land. Okay, then taxonomic status of Ramapithecus in the light of Ramapithecus Sivapithecus controversy. Okay, so it's simply talking about the debate related to the position of Ramapithecus in phylogeny. So पहले Ramapithecus को माना जाता था कि एक distinct species है and that is actually representing the point of divergence between humans and the apes. ओके बाद में देखा गया कि रामापिथिकस के काफी सारे फीचर्स सेवापिथिकस जैसे ही हैं, तो रामापिथिकस को भी ओरांगुटान का एंसेस्टर माना जाता है एंड इट इज बिलीव दैट कि रामापिथिकस बेसिकली रिप्रेजेंट्स द फीमेल वर्जन ऑफ सेवापिथिकस बिकॉज ऑफ डिफरेंट स्टडीज, दैट इज व्हाट नीड्स टू बी टॉक्ड अबाउट हियर. Okay, then tribalism and pseudo tribalism. Tribalism means assertion of tribal identity. Okay, and pseudo tribalism means assertion of tribal identity without being a tribe. Okay, that is a false sense of tribalism. Okay, so this is like tribalism के cases में आप बता सकते हो how tribal political parties are coming up, tribals are asserting their rights. And then there is pseudo tribalism, that is certain communities they are trying to take the benefit by asserting themselves to be tribes. Kuki Methi conflict में you can talk about like Metis asserting their tribal status, या Gujjars of Rajasthan demanding the tribal status without being tribes. Okay, and then in the case of economy you can say that कि कई सारे products को tribal products बता के बेचा जा रहा है, that is the case of pseudo tribalism. Then Varnashram and its contemporary relevance. Okay, so you can explain this कि Varnashram क्या है, कि Hindu social system है. So a particular person based on his गुण will be assigned a particular वर्ण, जो ओरिजिनली बात कर रहा था कि आपके पास सात्विक गुण है, राजसिक गुण है या तामसिक गुण है. बेस्ड ऑन दैट यू विल बी गिवन अ वर्ण. ओके, कि आपके पास सात्विक गुण ज्यादा है तो यू विल बी गिवन ए ब्राह्मण वर्ण. आपके पास राजसिक और सात्विक गुण है तो यू आर एक्चुअली क्षत्रिय. आपके पास राजसिक और तामसिक है तो दैट इज अ वैश्य. एंड आपके पास तामसिक है तो देन यू आर ए शूद्र. एंड बेस्ड ऑन द गुण you will be given the varna, and based on the varna your training will be decided कि what kind of training you will get. अगर आपके ब्राह्मण के गुण हैं so you will be trained like a Brahmin, you will be taught the Vedas, you will be actually trained to become a preacher, okay, or the one who basically shares the knowledge. And that is how the Varnashram system was actually created. Okay, and then in the contemporary relevance it basically you need to talk about it, realizes the importance of nature and nurture, कि आप गुण innate थे और उसके बेसिस पे आपकी ट्रेनिंग हो रही है. तो उसके बेसिस पे बेसिकली आपको ट्रेन करना चाहिए. इफ समबडी इज गुड इन स्पोर्ट्स ही शुड बी ट्रेन्ड फॉर द स्पोर्ट्स. इफ समबडी इज गुड इन मैथमेटिक्स ही शुड बी ट्रेन्ड फॉर मैथमेटिक्स. इफ समबडी इज गुड इन कोडिंग ही शुड बी ट्रेन्ड फॉर कोडिंग. बट राइट नाउ हमारी जो ट्रेनिंग है दैट इज वेरी मच जर्नलिस्टिक. एवरीबडी इज रीडिंग द सेम थिंग फॉर ए लार्ज पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. अपने टैलेंट को एक्सप्लोर करने का मौका नहीं मिल रहा. सो वर्नाश्रम सिस्टम कैन बी एक्टिंग एज ए गाइडलाइट फॉर द फॉरेन एजुकेशन सिस्टम, सॉरी फॉर द प्रेजेंट एजुकेशन सिस्टम. Okay, that can be mentioned here. लोथल डॉकयार्ड इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड रिलेशन. ओके, हड़प्पा से सीधा सवाल है लोथल का. ओके, एंड कई सारे आपके पोर्ट्स हैं इन द नियर बाय रीजन दैट एक्चुअली शोज दैट कतर के, ओमान के, बहरीन के एंड देन मेसोपोटामिया के पोर्टल कनेक्शंस से दैट एक्चुअली दे वर एक्चुअली सर्विस्ड फ्रॉम लोथल. देर आर एविडेंसेस ऑफ दिस कि कई सारे सील्स आपको मेसोपोटामिया के मिले हैं यहाँ पे. और मेसोपोटामिया में देर वाज अ सिटी दैट वाज इनहैबिटेड बाय द पीपल फ्रॉम हड़प्पा, जिसको वो लोग मेलुहा कहते थे. Okay, so these kind of evidences are there. Okay, then comes the village was not merely a place where people lived, it had a design in which were reflected the basic values of Indian civilization. Who said this? Elaborate. It's a statement by Andre Bete. Okay, but even if you don't know this, आप मतलब दो ही स्कॉलर्स ने ऑलमोस्ट सिमिलर टाइप की बात की है, आंध्र बेते और एस सी दुबे ने. ओके, यू कैन दिस एंड इट इज बेसिकली टॉकिंग अबाउट इंडियन विलेज एज ए सोशल सिस्टम. ओके, सो इंडियन विलेज एज ए माइक्रोकॉज्म ऑफ इंडिया. आपको इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन की वैल्यू सिस्टम दिखेंगी. तो वैल्यू सिस्टम इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन की कास्ट, फैमिली सिस्टम, इंटरकास्ट रिलेशनशिप, ओके, द बिलीफ सिस्टम, द रिलीजन, द फेस्टिवल्स. ओके, सो एग्रीकल्चरल इकोनॉमी that will be reflected here. Okay, discuss the role of NGOs. Straightforward question. NGO, role of NGO in tribal development. Trace the history and describe the methods of formulating the list of OBCs both at the state and national levels. Okay, this is something that you must, means although mentioned in the syllabus which we usually ignore. So OBC वाला क्या है कि that is मंडल कमीशन ने एक रिपोर्ट दी and acceptance of this Mandal Commission created a category called as OBCs. These are those communities that are considered to be socially and economically relatively backward from the so-called dominant caste, but they are not engaged in any kind of polluting jobs. Okay, so that is the OBCs. Mandal Commission ने जो criteria दिया उसमें तीन major criteria थे. One is social backwardness, second is educational backwardness, and the third one is economic backwardness. Social backwardness की weightage थी 25%. एजुकेशनल बैकवर्डनेस वेटेज 25% एंड इकोनॉमिक बैकवर्डनेस वेटेज वाज 50%. और उसमें कई सारे क्राइटेरियाज थे. Okay, that needs to be mentioned. And then you should mention about the articles of the constitution that actually recognize OBC, and then NCBC, which has recently been made a constitutional body, National Commission for Backward Class. Okay, and state और national level के अलग अलग list होते हैं based on their own surveys. Identify the contemporary limitations in the process of tribal development. How can anthropological knowledge contribute in this process? Okay, so limitation in the process of tribal development. Okay, so simply the problems, or say this is a indirect question from impact of modern democratic institution on tribal society. So that is how, and what are the shortcomings of the modern democratic institutions on the development of tribes. So top bottom approach है, culturally sensitive नहीं है, okay, ethnocentric है, या फिर basically does not takes into one size fit all approach है, that does not takes into the cultural aspects of the society. PR और ऑल्टरनेटिव क्या है, PRA PLA प्रमोट करना, ओके, ट्राइबल बेस्ड और कल्चरल सेंसिटिव प्रोग्राम्स डेवलप करना, ओके, वन साइज फिट ऑल को रिजेक्ट करना, उनको पार्टिसिपेटरी करना, ओके, ट्राइबल पार्टिसिपेशन को इंक्रीज करना. सो दैट इज, इफ यू रिमेंबर, दैट इज द पंचशील के रिस्पेक्ट में बात करना. डेवलप देम अलोंग द लाइन ऑफ देयर ओन जीनियस, does not over impose or say over administer their area, but create a sense of group of personals from their own place. Okay, do not overwhelm them with multiplicity of schemes. One say integrated policies honi chahiye. So that is what you can be mention anthropological knowledge, and then you can quote certain examples like Hemmendorf ne Rajgunds में Hemmendorf पट्टा land rights को ensure कराया. LP विद्यार्थी का बिरहोर action research project that you can mention here. Okay, SC दुबे sorry, DN Majumdar की study या SC Roy की study, how basically it benefited the tribes. Various examples like this can be mentioned here. Okay, discuss the rising ethnic conflicts in India and propose their possible remedial measures. Ethnic conflicts डिस्कस करना है, तो what are the major reasons? You can again एमी ब्राउन के अप्रोच से आप बता सकते हो कि there are some structural issues, then there is a trigger event, then there is a rise of leadership, or you can mention that there are certain structural problems, or then there are proximate issues that can actually be used to explain the rising conflicts. Then explain certain ethnic conflicts. You can mention about the Naga Kuki conflict, sorry, Kuki Meti conflict, or you can talk about say communal issues like Hindu Muslim conflicts, या जम्मू कश्मीर regional issues, या जम्मू कश्मीर या बोडोलैंड का इशू क्या है, लैंग्वेज वाले इश्यूज जो अभी चल रहा है in different states. Okay, so you can mention and possible remedial measures. You can talk about certain approaches that is given by BK Roy Burman or maybe TC TC Das, TN Madan. They have actually talked about certain measures that can be done. मतलब general measures है, बस आपको इन scholars का नाम use करता है. That's it. Evaluate the concept of nation states and discuss its impact on indigenous societies. Nation state का ideas directly mentioned in the syllabus. Okay, and यहाँ पे there is a threat. So nation state can have different policies with respect to the tribes. One is it can go for forceful assimilation of the tribes. It can actually, second, it can go for integration of the tribes. Okay, so उनको कई सारे rights दे सकते हैं. And then you can compare कि what is the impact. फोर्सफुल एसिमुलेशन होगा तो एथनोसाइड हो सकता है, ट्राइबल जीनोसाइड हो सकता है, देयर कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी विल बी गॉन, और से देयर लैंग्वेज इज एट थ्रेट, और इंटीग्रेशन होगा तो बेसिकली डाइवर्सिटी इन द कल्चर कैन बी मेंटेन. यू कैन मेंशन द एग्जांपल ऑफ चाइना एंड यूघर्स, or the case of US and the tribal reserves that they have created, or India, the integrationist policy of India. Okay, so that is impact of indigenous society. I am not able to cover all the other questions. Okay, last one, time नहीं मिला type करने के लिए. So that is, I believe, if you see the paper, you will find that the questions were framed in a manner that might not seem to be direct. But after this discussion, I believe that since the points that I mentioned, most of you will find that anything that I told right now is not something new. Okay, जो आपने कभी पढ़ा नहीं हो. It's all about कि whether you will be able to apply that knowledge or not. That is based on your regular reading, or that is based on your regular say application of this. So the key takeaway from this is whether this paper is easy, tough, moderate, whatever. ये हमारा aim नहीं है. वो अलग अलग लोगों के लिए अलग अलग है. But the key takeaway is that focus more on understanding the topic, focus more on connecting the topics rather than just reading the content, rather than just elaborating कि और case studies कहाँ से ले आए, नई नई case studies कहाँ से ले आए, और scholars को कहाँ से पढ़े. नहीं, अपने को समझ में आ रहा है, आर वी एबल टू कनेक्ट द डॉट्स, आर वी एबल टू हैव ए होलिस्टिक पिक्चर ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट, और आर वी जस्ट रीडिंग द टॉपिक्स in the form of question answer format. So ये question answer format, question banks, okay, toppers notes, they can assist, but they can never become your first hand or the primary source of reading. Okay, that cannot be give you a holistic picture, क्योंकि जब तक direct सवाल आ रहे थे तो then that kind of sources were doing very well, but without proper reading this time अंडरस्टैंडिंग अगर मिसिंग है तो डायरेक्ट सवाल नहीं आ रहे, एनालिटिकल हैं, दे आर ट्राइंग टू कनेक्ट द टॉपिक्स एंड दैट डिमांड्स some say deeper understanding or say some in-depth analysis wherein you can connect the topics. So that is from my side. Okay, and we will discuss in more detail. I'll try to share it some insights on it on the Telegram group. So that's it. All the very best for all those who have attempted the paper. Okay, and I hope that you get good results this year. Thank you so much. Yes, yes.